Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to our breakfast event for August, coming to you from lockdown in Melbourne. So welcome to the party. I hope you're feeling as good as can be expected today, wherever you are around the country, around the world. I welcome you into this conversation. Let's connect and let's support each other through these challenging times, hey? So I didn't expect to be doing this today on my own with my homegrown lighting, but wherever you are, let's jump in and support each other, have a great conversation, maybe even some coaching today, and talk about this thing called self-sabotage and how to beat it. Because when things happen like this, lockdown, quick changes, we have to adapt and shift. It can be easy to get stuck in our head, can't it, and start to move into those patterns that are really sabotaging for ourselves. So I'd really love to see who's here today. Good morning. Hello, Helen. Lovely to see you and welcome. Thank you for being here. And as everyone joins, and I know for a lot of people when lockdown happens, it means that we can join or we can't join. So I'm really aware of whatever's happening kind of there. I've just had some messages this morning saying, oh, I can't be there now. I'm homeschooling. I'm doing all that. So it's totally fine. And you'll be able to listen to the recording if anything happens for you this morning and you have to be interrupted, that's totally fine. So welcome. And let's see who's here. Anne's here. Good morning, Anne. Hi, Nat. No, I'm not on my own. Oh, thanks, Nat. Hi, Lisa. Lovely to see you. Welcome. So as everyone's jumping on, you might like to shift your sharing in your chat box to everybody so that when you're all sharing your comments or your reflections as we go through the session today, then when you pop that you're sharing in the chat box, everyone can see it. And I know that when you're all reading each other's comments, it's so powerful because there might be something that you learn from each other that is your key takeaway for today, is your golden nugget, is that light bulb moment because someone shared with you their experience. One of the things I'd really love to share with you about our sharing is that what's really more meaningful and powerful is when you share from your own experience, yeah, as opposed to trying giving other people advice. So we don't give advice in this group. What we do is we share from our personal experience. It takes more courage, it takes a little bit more vulnerability, but it's much more meaningful for everybody else when they're reading it because it lets us into your world and helps us understand some things in ourselves. So I encourage you to do it, share that way as well. So wherever you're from around Australia or the world, I know we have some people dialing in from lots of different places. So I'd love to hear where you're from and let everyone else know where you're from as well. Hi, Nita. Hi, Marnie, lovely to see you. Lisa, hi. Holly, nice to see you. Welcome. Who else is here? Liam, lovely to see you. Welcome, Kate and Kelly. Jazz, Lily, welcome, Tracy. So good to welcome you here and to see you. Hi, Zoe. Morning. And well done, all of you, for being awake. Firstly, it's a drizzly day in Melbourne, but to wherever you are, whether you've got your dressing gown on, a cup of tea in hand, or whether you're chasing children around the kitchen, thank you for being here. I know that you could have done a lot with this hour in your life, and no doubt juggling lots of things. So most of us, I imagine, or many of us, are in lockdown at the moment, and Melbourne are going into number 6. I think we are, and it feels, for me, it feels like a brick wall, like I'm like that for a moment. It almost felt like surely it can't happen again after number 5. And so here we are for 7 days. And so there's lots of emotion and feeling around how will we do this? What's this going to mean? And sometimes it can feel like, is it worth it? Do you ever feel like that? Oh, gosh, I've got to do this again. Maybe you don't say gosh, maybe you say something else. I've got to do this again. I'll make another shift. Or if you're in Sydney or Brisbane and you've already been in lockdown. Sydney, you've been in lockdown obviously for a while now and experiencing something that Melbourne experienced similarly last year. So there's so many things that we have to juggle, and not only practically, children, family, responsibilities and worries, but also things emotionally, yeah? So I really would love to offer you this space today. These breakfast events are really safe space. Imagine a room that you walk into And as soon as you walk in, there's that feeling of, I can be myself. I can just let it hang out. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to keep myself tense and tight. I don't have to apologize for my power. When I feel empowered and confident, I don't have to apologize for that or clip my wings or tone myself down. I can just be who I am. And so that's your space today. That's a space to be entirely yourself and explore for you, what's your next step? What's the thing that you want to let go of, that's you're dragging around, that's holding you back? What's the next space for you to break through into? More freedom, more connection, more joy. And maybe that translates then into greater results as a leader, as a manager, as an influencer in your business or your organization. So if we haven't met before, my name's Karen Williams. I'm an executive and leadership coach. I work in the space of transformation. My team and I work with women one-on-one and in groups, helping them bust through their barriers and be all that they can be so that they can have a ripple effect in their community, in their family, in their business, and in their organisation that they want to have. We also then work with leaders and teams in business at multiple layers of business, whether that's in executive teams or frontline managers, helping them collaborate with their peers and helping them have accountability and brave conversations with their direct reports, with other stakeholders around the business. So my foundational word for this trip in my lifetime is the word connect. And so I know, and I've had many experiences over the years, 20 years I've been a coach, when I say people connect from a place of vulnerability and courage and openness and curiosity, then I know that anything is possible. And that's proven to me over time in many different methodologies as a coach. And it's very exciting to me that I get to live my vision and to bring this work to you and also to those that we work with on a larger scale in organisations. So thank you for allowing me to live my vision. And I hope that I'm supporting you in living your vision as well, because that's certainly my intention. I'm very grateful and appreciative of my team that have caught that vision and we're running together. We've had an extraordinary 12 months, even with all the challenges, and I'm very appreciative of that and all the clients that choose to work with us and allow us to be their transformational partners. And you as well, because you're here allowing us to do that this morning. And I look forward to this conversation. So let me see who else is here today. Caitlin, good morning. Elizabeth, hello. Jackie, nice to welcome you. Thank you for being here. So today is about how to outwit your upper limit. What is an upper limit? And I'll talk about that. And also to bust through so that we don't continue this self-sabotage that we do. Have you ever done that thing that you always do, that you just go down that slippery slope of analysis and criticism and why did I do that? And why didn't I say that when I had the chance? We've all done that, haven't we? And I used to do that a lot. And when we're in our head and worrying and over-analysing, it can come from our desire to try and achieve this perfectionism state that we all think is possible, but actually is not. Yeah, and so we stay stuck in our head. And even though on the outside we've got a fabulous smile, on the inside we're just going round and round churning. It really hurts us from the inside. It really causes a lot of stress in our body. And it closes us down so we don't have access to all of our brain and the creative inspiration that we could otherwise tap into. And we also come across really guarded to others, don't we? So there's this sort of feeling of separateness or distance between us and others when we're in our head analysing ourselves. And so one of the things as a leader, what we need to learn is, if we want to have the impact that we want to have to help our people grow, is to understand what it is to be out there with them, to let go of all the stuff that we do in our head about ourselves and get out there with them and be present with people. That's when we can do our greatest service, and that's when we can do our greatest service for ourselves as well. So as we go through today, last session, we opened the call for people sharing, and I want to do that again today. So hopefully I can sort that out through the technology that I have available to me today. But it was extremely powerful. I've watched that session back And Jazz is on the call, I know, this morning, and I really appreciate you being here, Jazz. Thank you so much for your willingness to go first and share what was true for you at the time last month. And if anybody else on the call today, if you've watched that piece of last month's session, it's so powerful and inspiring. And what I love about this work is that when you ask me a question, we can take it to a whole new level. So that's where I do my best work as a transformational coach, in partnership and co-creation with you. And if you listen to that section, it's about 40 minutes into the session. The rest of the session is much deeper and more powerful because of that question that you asked, Jazz, and your sharing. So I really honor the courage that it takes to step forward into a community like this. But this is the community that does the work. This is the community that it goes from thinking to doing. So we implement, and then we become. Thinking, doing, being. We do the work until we become what it is that we know. And that's the difference between being a leader who is able to bring out the best in others and hold space for others in their journey, to a leader who just gives great advice. And people might go, wow, that sounds amazing. But they don't make any changes in their behavior, and nothing changes in their results and their ability to feel free and empowered, and certain about and confident about themselves. So that's what we're doing. We're going from thinking to doing to being, and that's how we do that. It's in conversation. So let's have a conversation today. All right, so make sure you've got your journal and pen, because you will have a light bulb moment. You will hear a gold nugget from maybe myself, or certainly from people sharing in the chat box. So make sure that you're intentional about seeking something today that's going to make a big difference for you. All right, so for a moment, what I'd like you to do is just come to presence if you can. I'm not sure, maybe you've got some screaming children or some happy children, or maybe some screaming partners around you. But if you can just take a moment to stop and pause and take a breath. Give yourself a moment to come to your center. One more big breath. When we give ourselves permission to do that, sometimes we just want to stay there. Because the hardest thing is moving from not doing it into doing it. Once we're there, it's like, can I just stay here? Can everything just stop and let me just stay here? And it only takes a couple of breaths to get to that place, doesn't it? And so if you can feel inside you that moment of connection, that's that moment that you're looking for in your day-to-day. And that's the moment we're looking for when we're about to go into self-sabotage. That moment of connection and presence that brings us back to now, that has us let go of that old pattern that we do. Yeah. So that's what we're working on today. All right. So I want you to feel like this is a bit of a mini retreat. I've just got my notes down here. A bit of a mini retreat for you, a place for you to stop and pause, reflect, refresh, and reset, to gather what you need, the resources that you need, the learning, the insights, so that you can continue to show up in the way that you really want to without feeling depleted. And part of my journey has been about, how do I have the life that I really want, and how do I continue to create the vision that I really want, but not exhaust myself, not deplete my resources over and over. And that's a constant daily practice of self-care and self-awareness. And so that's part of what these breakfast events are about for you, is a place for you to come to remember that, because you know it, but do you do it? Yeah. And are you being that? So this is what your opportunity is today. Reconnect with that. So today, our think and our do and our leave. Yeah. So if this is the first time that you're here, then we always do, what are we going to think about today? What are we going to do today? And what am I going to leave with? Yeah. What am I getting out of this hour? Hopefully some great insights for you in your life. That's my intention. And that's what I ask you to have in your attention as well. All right, so our think, do, be, think, do, leave. So I want you to think about where your upper limits are. And I'll talk to you about upper limits in a minute. where are your upper limits? Where are they hiding? And that you don't know it, but you just find yourself repeating some things and you can't get out of it. It's just like you can see the train going that way, but it's like, how do I stop it? So where are your upper limits? I want you to create strategies. So today, I want you to be thinking about and then moving into creating strategies for recognizing your upper limit. So catching it sooner. Yep. So knowing when you've hit that ceiling, and then leave with new understanding about how to return to confidence more quickly without that. You know, when we do that self-sabotage, it's almost like we're stripping ourselves away from the inside out, isn't it? It's like we haven't had anything to eat for days. It's just that empty feeling. And we know that we do it, but it's almost like we think we can't stop it, or we've just done it so many times it just feels normal. But I want you to start to look at what's some new understanding that you can leave with that will have you stop that sooner and return to confidence. Yeah, that's my intention for you today. But The Big Leap, if you haven't read that, by Gay Hendricks, it's one of the books that I use in my programs. Look how small it is. It's such a skinny book. You can read it really quickly. And I've got it on Audible as well. And it's such a great book. It's got some key things in there. The first thing is the upper limit. And Gay Hendricks is someone, a consultant and a coach who's worked with high-profile people around the world. And he talks to, no matter how successful you are, and even when you are even more successful, that's when you're going to watch out for your upper limit, because it's going to be there. Yeah, and so the upper limit is like, and I'm going to draw it up now, is a ceiling that we put on ourselves. It's like a thermostat, is the way that Gay describes it. So here's what I want to put on the board for you as well. So I'm going to watch comments as we come through. So our upper limit is like this. Right. So it's if you imagine as a thermostat, in that based on our beliefs, our values, our thought patterns, our truths, right? Often we don't realize that our truth is not the truth. It's just our truth that we've made up over time. So the upper limit is this space we get to, this ceiling that we get to when we're coming up with excuses and justifications, yeah, about why we can't or why we shouldn't do something or be something that we really want to be, that our heart, that our vision, that our feeling of when we're feeling unbeatable or invincible, that we imagine, our upper limit goes, no, that's not possible. But it comes up with really great, logical, practical, reasonable reasons why, which is why we don't recognize it. So our upper limit is like this thermostat made up of these things that when we get to it, it brings us back down. It's like, so you imagine a thermostat in a room, yeah, air conditioning or heating. It gets to a certain level and then it just evens things out again. It heats the room up. Once it gets to 24 degrees, it just settles everything down. And that's where we are. We get to 24 degrees, that's our upper limit. And then we'll come up with some great excuses without knowing it, based on these things that bring us back down to this place of operating at a certain level. And this is representative of our self-worth. Yeah. So we let in what we believe, what our upper limit allows us from a self-worth perspective. And so I'll share with you where this happened for me recently, a new upper limit, right? So, we're very appreciative, my team and I, of being having a great year and being quite busy. And it just means that, as you grow, as we all grow, there's more things to juggle. And so when I get into my head around that, I can hear this, and not always do I catch it. Obviously, in this time I didn't. This conversation for not enough time, right? So that human conversation. And I started to get into a justification of how much time on the weekend I wanted to spend working because I deserve this and I should be having time off this. And I've been working weekends for 8 years, all that stuff, right? That normal human conversation that we do in our head. But what I was doing and not realizing it at the moment, setting myself up for not being as prepared as I could be for a presentation I was running. This was about 3 months ago. And right the night before, right up into that day, I just had this kind of drama going about how I wasn't fully prepared as I really wanted to be for this particular session. And that I didn't realize that the train was on the track. The train was going and I was on it, and I wasn't in the driver's seat. And so I did the presentation. Everyone loved it. That was the feedback I got. But I came off that session going, I did not nail it the way that I expect myself to nail it. I did not meet my own expectations. I feel like I really failed. And I came off that session, I was deflated and I was angry and frustrated with myself and really, really, really disappointed. Have you ever had any of those moments? And so my old slippery slope would have gone down this self-sabotage track of how unworthy I was, what do I think I'm doing? I don't know how to do this, right? This is not something that I should be doing, all that stuff. And normally I would stay in that, in the past, I would have stayed in that deep, dark tunnel for days and weeks. And then I would have been operating over the top of that, working even harder to try and get things to a place where I thought that they needed to be, pushing other people, including my team, harder and harder and harder, right? Not from a place of inspiration and what's possible, but from a place of motivation and force almost, yes? And my tone would have been different. I would have been closed off. Yeah. So what was happening though, so that's fine afterwards, but what was happening for about a week or two before was a conversation that I wasn't aware of, which was my upper limit. Because I was stretching now into a place where the session that I was delivering was much bigger than we'd done before, was really important. I had in my head that was different to other things, but it wasn't. It was what I'd done, what I've known, what I've been doing for many years. But the story in my head was telling me different things. And it had me then close off and not do the preparation that I really needed to do, and instead stayed in a busy conversation. You with me? And then that set me up for the drama of not being prepared as I really, really wanted to be. And then that set me up for the self-sabotage afterwards. So I'm hoping that you can see the pattern of the upper limit, where it doesn't happen at the moment, it happens in the lead up toward it. And we get stuck in that conversation. And if we're not awake to it, it's sending us down a self-sabotage track. Are you guys with me? So I want you to think about, where are you starting to now hear a conversation that you might always tolerate, called busy, or obligation around the kids, or other people's expectations of you? Yeah. Some pattern that you've got going that will be based in beliefs and thoughts that you've made up, but will actually be representing your self-worth, and will have you be sabotaging in moments when you could actually shift and create some clarity and make some clear decisions. Yeah. So what are these moments here for you? Because what happened for me was, rather than go down the track, I sat in that space of failure. And I want to talk to you about that, but I want to hear from you first. Where are you starting to see these moments of self-sabotage, where you can see that conversation was not really in your awareness before? It might be you actually really love the detail and you over-prepare and you worry yourself sick before going into meetings or sessions or presentations. And that's your upper limit. And if you're not prepared, then you put the meeting off because you don't think that you're able to deliver if you haven't got all the T's crossed, or you don't speak up in a meeting. That's your upper limit, even though you've got a great idea. Or there's an initiative that you want to put up on the wall for everyone to see, but you don't do that. And you wait for the next piece that you need to gather, or someone else's opinion, before you put that up for everyone to see. So I'd love to hear from you. Where are you seeing your upper limits play out that you didn't realize were there, that were kind of silent conversations but now you're starting to see as that thermostat that lets you get to a certain level. Sometimes it's a financial level. We get to a certain level, and then we start to bring that down, and we stay at that certain limit. I hit a ceiling in my business for about the first 5 years, the same ceiling, and I knew it was me, and I just wasn't seeing what it was. Yeah, and I got to a certain level, and it would just stay underneath that. We've busted through, and then there's always the next upper limit, right? So what are your ceilings? So Helen says, a recent job interview. So what happened for you, Helen? What was that about? And I'd love to hear a little bit more about it in the chat box. Did you not prepare? Did you not feel confident? Did you hold yourself back when you were there? What was your thermostat? How was your thermostat playing out? So where is that thermostat that you want to catch? And once you've busted through that one, there's going to be another one. Yeah. So Gay Hendricks in his book talks about this upper limit. There's always the next kind of like, I feel like it's this almost cloud ceiling. It feels like a ceiling of clouds where you get to it and then you just kind of sink back. And it sounds really reasonable and justified, but it's not. But now looking back on it, it's actually your upper limit at play. Sometimes what we can do is take a breath and feel into it, and we know it's right there. Yeah. So Helen says, my prep was insufficient and my story not really representative of my capability, underplayed by my experience. Yeah. And so if you look back now, and if you can be with what was the thing that was holding you back from your doing the prep that you needed to do, and what's the and so my story not really representative of my capability. Isn't that interesting? What I find for a lot of women is we go into a room or, as you said, Helen, into an interview, and we're just not willing to talk ourselves up to what we've really achieved and what we're really capable of. And so that's our upper limit at play. I was working with a leader a while back, and she wasn't willing to own her space on a stage when there was other people on the stage with her. She felt really uncomfortable. How much space should I take up here? You know, I'm okay when I'm on a stage on my own, but what happens when there's 2 or 3 other women who are equally as, you know, accomplished and have achieved as much in their career and have as much credibility as I do? Like, that was something that really disempowered her. She didn't want to overstep. She didn't know how much space was okay for her to take up. So rather than just her being in her full space and owning her whole, you know, energy and ability, she started to pull her energy in because she didn't want to overstep. Where what I'm an advocate for is everyone being in their biggest energy. Yeah. And what's possible then? All right. So I'd love to hear some more sharing. Let me see if I've got my chat box open in the right way. I hope I have. Would love to hear some more sharing from you, or questions if you aren't yet clear about what your upper limit is. Talk to me about that, and I'm happy to go deeper with you. Otherwise, feel free to share in the chat box. So what happened for me, instead of going down that road of failure, like as in self-sabotage, and, you know, that very familiar feeling we have about why we shouldn't and what's not possible for us anymore, and why this is the reason why I should just pack my bags and go home and never come out again. You know, all of those things, why I should not try again, avoiding the conversation with instead of following up on those conversations. So rather than doing all of that, I stopped and I breathed and I sat with the failure. And my ego didn't want to do that, because my ego was telling me it's everyone else's fault. I was blaming everyone else in my head. Yep, a coach of 20 years and I still do that. It's human nature. And that's really important for us to know, that part of being human is we have an ego, an identity that doesn't want to feel pain, that doesn't want to be present. That's the part of us that doesn't want to meditate. Yeah. And so instead of sitting with the failure, the ego wants to run away from it and will do anything that it can. And that's part of why we stay stuck here, because we never move through that feeling of failure, right? So so what I did was I breathed for about 3 days. I just kept feeling the failure and breathing it and honoring it, feeling the disappointment And what that allowed me to do, because if I ran away from it, I was ripping myself off from a learning, because I would have just repeated the same thing again in another situation. But instead of that, allowing myself to have space for the failure, for the vulnerability, as Brene says, to own our whole story, right? To own our strengths and our genius, as well as our weaknesses and our gaps, our limitations in our own mind. If we can be with all of that, then we're able to move through it in our feelings and grow from that. Yeah. And so I was able to look back on with awareness and discernment. What could I have done differently? Where were the moments that I was sabotaging myself before the session, justifying it? Because I was fearful, I was feeling vulnerable that I wouldn't do a great job. I was worried that this session wasn't going to go well. And so instead of feeling those feelings before, I stayed stuck in my pattern and stayed on the slippery slope of self-sabotage, which then ended in a crash at the end of feeling like I didn't, that disappointment. But if now what I can see is, if I look back on that, those weeks leading up to it, okay, there were the moments I was self-sabotaging because I was scared that I wasn't going to do as good a job as I really, really wanted to do. And so I was living into that future, and that upper limit was keeping me doing the same thing, which was not preparing as well as I could. You guys getting this? All right, so let me read some comments. So thank you for sharing. So Jen says, I have an example, can't quite put my finger on the upper limit, but it's the feeling of it all being too hard and not knowing where to start. So wanting to retreat and run. Yes. So maybe this last piece, Jen, that I've just shared with you, which is if, we're moving into something that is important to us, or we feel like is sort of like the next step in what we're out to achieve, like the next part of our vision, or the next feeling of bigness, or the next feeling of importance of something. And it we're not sure if we'll be enough for it. Will I be good enough? Will I do a good enough job? Will they feel it's great? Will they like it? Will they want me? Will they, all of those things that we do as human beings that are related to our old patterns. When there's something coming that feels like that, we're not often awake to that piece. And instead we go into the busyness, the justification, and all of that other pattern that we do, because we haven't let ourselves feel the vulnerability of the importance or the fear or whatever it is that we're feeling about what's coming. And so instead of doing that, we just shift into our program, and then we go on the self-sabotage train. Yeah, I think that might help give you an extra piece there. So Vicky shares, paralyzed by indecision around timing to visit Australia. Yeah, to a point I physically couldn't make a decision or trust my, beautiful, yeah. So it's that indecision. Indecision is a drain on our energy, isn't it? I've experienced that myself recently. I hate indecision. Why am I staying indecision? Okay, meditate more, wait for the clarity, right? But that feeling of being indecisive can really drain us. And so it's one thing that I'm conscious of, is not letting myself stay in that place too long. And sometimes that also can be, when we have those responsibilities around family, what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do, and especially in this time of the pandemic and so much uncertainty around us circumstantially, it can impact our ability to make decisions, yeah? Or we can let it impact us. Holly says, I often think I'm falling behind. I'm not doing enough. Oh yeah, I know that feeling. When I stop, breathe and take a look, I'm often right where I need to be. Beautiful. I think it's an upper limit thing in my strategy to overwhelm. Yes. Oh, so good. So that's a great catch, Holly, because our strategy or our program is, when we're feeling overwhelmed, we know we're in program. When we know that we're looking too far ahead beyond where we can see clarity, and we're tolerating that. And so then that overwhelmed feeling is coming at us. And what you've said there is that you're catching it. And so you stop, pause and breathe. Yeah. And so that's that dramatization, isn't it, of all the things that are coming at us. And it's exactly one of the pieces that I practiced out of this experience for myself, was kept coming back to presence. This is something I'd love you to write down for everyone, which Holly has shared beautifully, is I keep coming back to presence. If I can keep coming back to presence when I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I know I'm sabotaging myself, or I don't have clarity about what the decision is. If I can keep coming back to self and presence and be in this moment, that's going to help restore my resources within me. If I can do that for a little while, and then that's going to help me then have what I need to take a step forward, and to trust when that timing is coming. Yeah, to trust the time when I'm really in my space, then I know that that deep trust is there, and I can trust the timing. It might not be coming in the way that my ego wants it to, or as quickly as I think it should, because what everyone else thinks. You know, when I'm worried about how quickly things are moving, I know that's my ego thinking about what it looks like from the outside in, as opposed to how it feels from the inside out. I love Gary Vee's share on LinkedIn recently about, it doesn't all have to be big, right? We don't all have to have the big thing. We can be, it's about what makes us fulfilled and what's happiness and joy for us. Yeah, very good. Thank you. So Lisa shares, I can totally relate. My internal dialogue will be around, I'm not enough. Yeah. Skilled experience. Yeah. I didn't realize this, what was pushed down to detail. Yeah, slows me down. Frustrates my team and I show up closed off. Totally setting me up to overanalyze my performance and feel even worse than before. Oh my God, that's so good, Lisa. I'm hoping everyone can see. Yes, everyone can see that. I'd love everyone to have a read of Lisa's comment, because it's really insightful. And I think that you'll gain something valuable from that. And so we all have some version of not enough. Yep. And that's what trips us up here. My version of not enough is I'm not wanted. And I call that our unanswerable question. And I learned this a long time ago in my early days as a coach, this thing that we call the unanswerable question. And it's created from an experience we have as a child. And I decided I'm not wanted. So then my unanswerable question became, do you want me? So it's that constant driver. And it was one of the things that caused this experience for me recently, a few months ago, which was, you know, will they want me? Will they want me? Will I be enough? Will they want me? Right. And I wasn't aware enough at the time. I was caught in my drama and busyness, and I wasn't listening closely enough to my internal dialogue. And I was on the train, you know, the trigger train in the trigger tunnel, heading towards the crash. And I crashed. Yes. Okay, good. Very good. Yes, you're on the train. Yeah, get off the train. Yeah. Okay, beautiful. All right, so I think we're getting this. Very good, guys. I love your sharing. Thank you so much. And I know that everyone reading your shares gets so much value. All right, so we're kind of getting a sense of what the upper limit is and how it plays out. Take a moment to reflect on yours. I'm reflecting on my notes because I want to make sure I give you everything that I want to give you. Yeah, part of that for me was, you know, it's a story in our head, isn't it? It's the story of that then causes the embarrassment or the shame that we live with inside of ourselves. And it's just based on a story of what we're telling ourselves about how something went and how something didn't go, or what we created. You know, was it an expression of us? Was it the real expression? Did I present myself well in the interview? We don't know what's happening necessarily for people around us, but we do make up in our head what we think we know, right? But if we can keep coming back to presence, it's going to give us that awareness that we can actually take a different step forward rather than stay on that train. All right. Lisa shares, I hit my upper limit when introduced to a new board member who I perceived and since picked up that I was smart enough to be at the level I was. I would over-prepare to board meetings and my true self would not show up. Yes, even though I delivered growth and results and the boardroom's confused. Yes, so good. Yes, not smart enough. Yeah. Yeah. So with your team, you're fine, right? And you've got that confidence and that self-assuredness from a place of being open, right? Not sort of guarded and pushing. But with the board, it's different. Yeah. And I'd love to know how that played out for you, Lisa. Excellent. All right. So I'm going to open the mic shortly. How did it be 8:10? Okay. So here's the thing I want you to know about our upper limits. They can lie dormant if we're not growing. If we're tolerating mediocrity in any area of our lives and not actually going for our visions, not allowing ourselves to dream, then our upper limits will be there, but we just won't know it. Yeah. So as Gay Hendricks talks about, everyone has upper limits, and there's always that new next upper limit. But if we're not pushing up against it, then we can stay very kind of, let me use the word loosely, satisfied in this, level of mediocrity that we're accepting for ourselves. But what I know about human being and being a coach for so long, and on my own journey as well, is that our natural state is to grow. And if we're not growing, and you think about yourself and the people around you, your team, your business, people in your organization, everyone wants to grow. And if they're not growing, I promise you, they're not fully satisfied. They might sound like they are, they might have convinced themselves that they are, but on the inside, somewhere deep, dark down inside of themselves, they want more. It's a natural state for us to want more. Yeah. And so if we're not doing that, we're not hitting up, and it can be often because we don't want to hit that upper limit. We don't want to come up against that again and feel that pain. Yeah. We don't want that risk. But if people feel safe, if you can create a space for people to feel safe and do that, they'll trust you and they'll move with you. Yeah. So if you're not coming up against upper limits yet, or if you can't see them, maybe it's because you're not allowing yourself to go for your vision, what you really want, or to break out of what's, you've accepted for yourself in the past, whether that's a relationship, yeah, a career or friendship group. What do you really want? And that's something that's really important. Okay. So how do we recognize? So one of the things I want to talk to you about is how we recognize our upper limits. And how we recognize them. The first thing I want you to know is that we actually need to listen to our language, right? To what's happening inside our body. Can you guys see that? We have to get even better at listening. Now, one of the things that I do really well, if nothing else, is listen. In my coaching, that's part of what causes a transformation is how I listen. Yeah. And I've studied listening for years. I've practiced it deeply for years, and I'm still practicing, right? And I got caught out in this experience that I shared with you. I wasn't listening. So I want you to know that there's places inside yourself that you're not listening to, yeah, that are actually getting away from you. And they're causing you to come back down, hitting your upper limit and come back down. So our language will give us away, right? So if I look back on that period leading up to those to that session, I will think about, that language was different for me. I was in the busy language, and I don't often do that. I don't use that word busy. I hate that word busy. I use the word productive. When I'm working with leaders and teams, my intention is to have them cut that word out of their language. It's a boring word. And yet I was tolerating it in my internal dialogue for a couple of weeks. And again, it was because I was protecting myself against my vulnerability of, will I do a good enough job here, right? So we've got to be listening to our language, but we've also got to be listening to what's happening inside our body. Do I feel open? Do I feel closed? Yeah, what's happening for me? All right, so listening. I want you to be also aware of your results. We have to actually be owning our results. What's happening, what's actually happening in reality. And this is for your team as well. When we deal with like what's happening now, we can understand how I'm showing up. Yeah. So if I looked at my results, and I have programs where we have milestones for preparation. And if I was looking at my results over that time and not in my head, I would have seen I wasn't hitting those milestones. If I had been watching the reality, the what so, what's the what so, what's actually going on, I would have gone, I'm not hitting those milestones. Wake up, Karen, something's going on. Yes, but I wasn't doing that. I was stuck. And so I let myself stay stuck inside my head, because clearly the fear and the coming up against the upper limit, I was trapped. I allowed myself to be trapped inside that. You guys with me? So there's the feeling. How am I feeling? What I should have done back then, or what I could have done differently, was stop, pause, And look, I'm someone who meditates every day. So I want you to know it's okay that we get stuck. This is human stuff, right? If you practice this stuff every day, you're still going to get stuck, and it's how we can learn and grow through it. So if I was tuning into more deeply how I was feeling, I would have acknowledged for myself and actually stopped and paused and felt it and gone, I'm actually feeling really vulnerable about this session. I really want it to go well. And I'm scared that they won't want me. That's what I would have said to myself. And I went, oh, that's my story. That's my I'm not wanted story from when I was 5. Yeah. But I wasn't listening and I wasn't feeling as deeply as I could. All right. I'm hoping this is helping you. Talk to me. So let me hear from you. I want to hear who would like to share, who would like to have a conversation with me, and maybe whether you're not sure whether your upper limit is, or you feel stuck, right? Or you'd like to get some coaching, on how to break through your upper limit. So Lisa says, I was in the cycle for over 2 years and it was a driver to deliver results. I needed to show I could do this. Yeah. Habit was not fun. I'm no longer with that business. Yeah. So Lisa, what have you learned? I'd love to have a conversation with you if you're open to it. Now, all you need to do is put your hand up, and then I can open the mic if you'd like to have a chat, because I'd love to hear what you've learned from that, what you do differently now. I'm sure it would be really powerful for everyone on the call. So if you're open to that, and certainly you don't have to, yes, you have your hand up. And now I've got to find you. And that's me putting my hand up. Okay, Lisa, there you are. All right. Lisa, hi, welcome to the call.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for sharing.
Now, just a warning, my mic may shut off. It's just giving me a warning that the battery is low. So my headphones, sorry. So if I cut off, that's why.
Okay, great. Thanks for the warning. So really powerful sharing. Thank you so much for contributing to the conversation. So that was that a while back for you when you were experiencing that pattern?
Yeah, so it was actually over a year ago since I left the business. I'm now with another business. And it was a really powerful experience. It was a real conundrum because it was amazing in the sense of what we achieved as a team. But there was a real blocker for me as I stepped up. It was the first time that I was working at a board level in my career, particularly with this company. I was with them for over 7 years. And in that time, I had 4 different group CEOs. So I worked under managed one brand for Asia Pac. But this final CEO, there just wasn't a click. And I found myself really having this desire that I wanted to prove my worth. And I felt incredibly vulnerable from the beginning. And I just didn't understand it. And I still need to do some work to understand it, because I don't want that experience to happen again. But since that year, I've completely changed my life. I've removed alcohol from my life. So during that difficult period, my coffee would be my wake up in the morning. I don't drink as much coffee now. And then the wine in the evening would be my downer. So for the past 12 months, I've kind of focused on getting my health and meditating daily, so then I can just be more present in my current role.
Yeah, beautiful. And some incredible decisions there you've made for your self-care and well-being. What I heard in what you were sharing, and thank you for sharing that, is that the CEO that you mentioned, something didn't click. And so there was something in that for you that sent you on a different path. Some decision, some belief, something happened inside that, from the sounds of it, right?
Yeah.
And you said you're looking to do some more work around that. And if I can offer this piece for you that may help, is that when you said that around it was fine. And then this last CEO that came in, there's something that happened for you there, and a decision that you made internally that had you then disempowered and then fall into and then trigger back into that pattern.
Yeah, that's right. I just didn't. I felt like a fraud.
Yeah, but there was something that happened that had you feel that way. And you don't have to go into detail.
Yeah. There was a moment. I think I was just, I think I was just quite vulnerable, and it being me didn't work.
Yes. Wow. Very powerful. And so, if you can hear, and I'm sure if this is for everyone on the call, you can hear our upper limit there, right? So as human beings, we're calibrating all the time. And when we're not fully in touch with ourselves, we're calibrating to what's coming at us. When what I mean by that is we're taking in the feedback from others, whether that's facial expressions or tone of voice or how people behave with us. And if we're not fully connected to us in a way that sort of brushes over us, then we'll take that external feedback on, making it mean it'll trigger something in us about an old pattern or an old belief system or a level of worthiness within us. And that will be because there's always a moment in time that triggers us into our self-sabotage, where we hit our upper limit and then it triggers us into that pattern. And if we can come back to that moment and find that moment where it could be a look, it could be, and it might have been over time, but there'll always be the first time that we experience that in that person or that situation where it has us question something in ourselves or reconnect with an old belief that doesn't serve us, that then starts to build and send us down that self-sabotage, which your pattern was to work harder and all that over preparation. Does this make sense, Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see the moment exactly when it happened. Yeah. It was over a dinner, first introduction, and it was quite a dismissive look, if you like. And then moving on to talk to the person next to them, it was like a complete shutdown. I was like, oh God, here we go. Yes. And that was the start.
Yes, so good. And what I love about this is when we get this moment, because our ego / identity doesn't want to identify this moment, so it keeps it as a blur, like it was because of this person, as opposed to, no, there's always a moment in time. There's always a moment in time when it's the first time, and then we start to build evidence and experience from there, right? So then you had 2 years of it, I think you shared.
Yeah.
Right? And it builds and it becomes a thing. And then our identity doesn't want to see that moment because it doesn't want to stop the self-sabotage pattern. Right? So, but when you see that moment, there's a moment of freedom.
Yeah. And I had an ongoing struggle because I really respected and really liked, this individual. So it wasn't a personal thing, but I had this struggle constant because I knew that individual was why I was feeling like this. So it was this constant battle.
Yes. And it's exactly right. It's usually not about the people themselves or the situation themselves. It's about our meaning that we add or the interpretation or perception of that. And as you said, it was at a dinner and a look, and we can make up lots in a couple of seconds about what's going on in a moment, right? And we're not aware of it. Our old patterns will trigger and there'll just be this spiral. It's almost like when we're meditating and we find ourselves off thinking about purple elephants. It's like, well, how did I get here, right? Mm-hmm. It's just it just happens so quickly. So the fact that you've got this moment now for you can help you gain more power around that trigger for you. Because when there was a moment, there was a dinner party, and then there was a moment, and then what I did after that, when we can own that moment and go, oh, what happened, what I made it mean, the 2 circles, what happened, what I made it mean. We go, oh, I made it mean that. it didn't mean that necessarily. I made it mean that. And that's where there's freedom. And we can then learn that for the next time. So the next time there's a dismissive look, instead of avoiding people who might give us dismissive looks for the rest of our lives, next time there's a look that we might think is dismissive, we can catch ourselves before we go down there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. I really appreciate it. Okay, everyone. So, Lisa, I don't know how to shut your mic, so I'll just leave it there. But all right, so 4 minutes to go, everyone. I want to make sure, wasn't that powerful sharing from Lisa, and really beautiful, brave sharing, courageous. So, I love this community that we come together and we hold space for each other and really listen for the greatness in each other and learn from our experiences together. That's to me, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. So I really appreciate your sharing, Lisa, and I really appreciate everyone's listening here. And so there's lots of thanks in the chat box for you, Lisa. So Michelle's asking, how do you stop yourself when you're in the thought process, when something triggers you? I'm struggling with this at the moment. Such a great question, Michelle, because that's certainly something that we're building a muscle in all the time. Yeah. So as I said, I've been doing this work for a long time and my own guinea pig the whole time through, and yet this still happens for me, right? So there's no end to this. There's only the stronger the muscle. And every time, if we can welcome this as an opportunity, I know it doesn't feel like this, but when we're in it, but the piece is, how do you stop yourself when you're in it, is this. Listen to the language that's in your head and coming out of your mouth. Is it empowered language? Is it blame language? Is it self-ownership? Or is it pushing responsibility away? So what's the flavor of the language in the internal dialogue? What are the results that are happening? As I shared with you, if I had have woken up for a moment and looked at the results, I would have realized I wasn't hitting the milestones of my preparation. And if I can be with the fact that I'm human and not make that mean that I'm a bad human, and just go, how come I'm not doing that? Oh, because I'm terrified I'm going to F this up, right? And what happened was I didn't meet my expectations because I didn't wake up, right? And then, so it's about looking at the results. So Michelle, having a look at the results around you, what's actually happening, what are you doing, what are you not doing? Yeah. And then the feeling, tuning into how am I feeling closed or open right now? So if we can do these three things, it will help us catch ourselves sooner. And instead of hitting that upper limit and coming back down and using all of our excuses that sound really reasonable, especially in this climate of uncertainty and, when we're continually adapting to lockdowns, it can be easy to kind of just give up. Yes, I totally get it. This is for all of us. And so if rather than hitting the upper limit, coming down, if we can go, wow, this drama in my head is because I'm at an upper limit. And if I can do these three things now, then I'll be able to catch what that upper limit is. And I can be with my vulnerability and fear. And I can understand what I'm making it mean. And then I can re-empower myself to move forward in an awakened state rather than a closed, busy drama state. Yeah, I hope that makes sense, Michelle. All right, we've got to wrap. So yes, and saying thanks, Lisa, a great share. Definitely got me thinking about situations I'm experiencing. Yes, very good. All amazing. I love the sharing. So I hope that's helpful, Michelle, to reconfirm for you that it really is about being aware of these three things and then understanding that that's going to take us down the train that we've always been on. As Lisa shared, she was on that train or hitting that upper limit for 2 years. Yes, and that's part of being human. But if we can tune in and catch ourselves and notice when we're numbing, and Lisa shared so bravely about the coffee and then the wine, the coffee to start us in the day and the wine to bring us down at night. And so if we can know the things that we're doing that numb our feelings, that keep us distant from being aware of our vulnerabilities, then we can stop those numbing things and tune into our vulnerability. And that's what's going to have us be able to do this. Yeah. All right. Awesome work, guys. Thank you so much for being with me in this conversation today from lockdown. Let yourself feel, let yourself be. I'm thinking of maybe having something next week as well, just to kind of have a conversation, maybe more open conversation rather than me, sort of sharing content with you, just have a conversation. So if you feel that might be valuable for you, I'll leave the chat box open, give me some yeses, and then I'll schedule a session for that next week. We may all need a little bit more support at the moment. And so I appreciate you all being here. Thank you for sharing your hour with me this morning. Have a great Friday, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.